talking so that you know. So you don't feel like you have to ask every time that somebody speaks up.
Let's make it a.
It'll be fairly-
The voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't wanna
Let's
have
get,
Have it too.
okay, I think we can,
And we can call to order.
we can get
come
started.
up. Yeah, welcome, everybody, and welcome, Ryan. Any additions that we have? Sandy emailed us some more
To
information,
go under legislative.
and that'll go under legislative update. Any additions for the agenda? Or
I wasn't fully prepared for the housing trust fund discussion. I have
Okay.
some information, but I wasn't as prepared for today, so I don't know that we'll need that much
time? Okay, okay,
I have some updates, but I have not connected.
okay.
So just
FYI.
owning that.
Yeah, well, I also want to give it enough time to, like, if we needed as much discussion because because of what you said last time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Whatever information, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah,
But that might give us more time for the legislative.
yeah, and that's gonna give us more time for the legislative. And also, Tom said he would be here at around 7, so he can slide in, after if we end up a little bit early, then that'll leave more time for some of that discussion, and then we can talk a little about the legislation. And the door's open.
Do you want the door closed?
Do you want the door closed? or-
That's up to you. It's open to the public, so the door
Okay.
can be
Oh,
opened
yeah,
or
that's
closed,
what-
but
Yeah,
Air gets circulated.
yeah, get a little breathing
yeah,
room.
exactly.
I appreciate whoever printed these out for us. Thank you, Nora.
I'm a visual
I
person.
don't have a printer and I'm like.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the what?
And if,
Oh,
Oh, you did that as well?
Yeah. All right, well, I'm gonna send around all the goodies then, and then take 3 of these.
Thank you.
Look at you.
Printing.
I'm starting to feel like, oh my.
what do you mean 3? Oh, we're
Because-
supposed to
Yeah,
pass them out? and
Yeah,
sign them?
yeah, go hang them somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I just, not now, but after the meeting, Kelsey, could you send me the agenda again, because I couldn't find it. The only thing I meant I couldn't read the minutes, that's all.
Okay, yep.
I must have deleted it.
Open for the public. Ryan, did you have anything that you wanted to ask or say before we get to announcements and staff report?
I heard him.
Was that a no?
With-
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
My own tech issues. I have no questions right now, but I might ask a question or two later.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. You're welcome. Announcements. Who has announcements? Just give me a hand up so I can get to everybody who has announcements. You have announcements
Vincent.
probably.
I'll say something.
Announcements. Do you have an announcement? Okay, brief one. I have an announcement.
You might go with members first, and then I
Okay,
can jump
okay.
into anything else.
Do you want to start us off?
Last night we had the first joint meeting of the South Burlington Parks and Natural Resources and Open Spaces Master Plan, public discussion. And so we went over this very long survey. Kelsey, of course, was there. It's 12 pages long, 47 questions. And we encouraged them to abbreviate and made a lot of suggestions on items. Now, here's one that I wanted to ask you guys about. This would be a survey question. It would be asked in different formats too. Online survey. Do you feel that there is a need to preserve additional open space and natural areas in South Burlington? Okay, simple question. I worry that preserve additional open space and natural areas in South Burlington can be heard by some as kind of code for no more housing in the southeast quadrant. And I know that's a ridiculous reach, but I think it'll be interpreted that way by some people. So I suggested that somehow we put this into a neighborhood context for neighborhoods. And we can see what people from different neighborhoods say about it. But that's the only housing related thing that I was particularly concerned about. So
I'm very concerned about that question. It's almost an automatic yes.
Yeah,
And
I
it,
know.
you know, it's sort of not okay to say no to that kind of
Right,
question.
that's right.
And it could be used
Right.
to the disadvantage of the residents, in my view.
Definitely.
Well, and it also doesn't offer a prioritizing. So like you could say, do I want this? You might say, yeah. And you say, do you want that? Yeah. And it allows you to endorse one thing, but you might endorse a lot of things. And then once you prioritize, you might say, well, I would elevate this over that. And so in terms of the survey, is it just a yes or no question?
Yes, this is just a yes or no question. But as we talked about it last night, you know, we should do it in our neighborhood, you know, in your neighborhood, something like that. And to put together open space in natural areas, also seems to be something of a big, I mean, you know, a field of open space, or overlook park, open space. Is that a natural area? I don't know. But anyway, I want to think about it some more. If you guys had suggestions, I think I'd like to hear from
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
two things that just pop up in my head about that would be. And I don't know if there's something in that survey already that might say, you know, which open space do you use most often? Or something to the effect of identify
Mhm.
what area you use most often. But
I
the other-
like that, give a list.
that or
That's included.
volunteer where
We-
it
we-
is.
We do have that.
So
Those are
something
included.
like that.
What was the second one, Elizabeth?
Well, the second one is, it's kind of falls into the education side of it, but basically the city plan calls for some level of protection with a target of 50% or something of land, and we are at right now, I believe, 51%. So I wonder if in that context, if it says the city plan calls for this target, this is where we're at, and it's a variety of levels of protections. It's regulatory, state, it's conserved, it's habitat, things like that. So I don't know if there's something where you preface it with, here was the target, here's where we're at. You know, is there a need for more and where, or get to the neighborhood side of it, something to that
Yeah.
effect. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's a fact relative to the city plan right now.
The other thing is, there was a lot of input for that plan, so and it's supposed to last for what, 8 years?
Mhm.
So I sort of. Again, I think those are automatic yeses and they're very troubling in terms of our goals.
I feel that question is kind of a broad. For example, if let's say we have this question in this neighborhood, comparing this neighborhood from 5 years ago,
Mhm.
that question 5 years ago, you'll say, no, we can still have some room for a building. Today, we're like feeling like conjuncted, you know, with all
Mhm.
those buildings around us. Now, if that question is for the neighborhood, let's say 5K a little bit north where Dorset Street is and the parks and the fields and all that. Somebody might say, we can still have room to build something over there. I'm just saying, it depends on the area in
Yeah.
the neighborhood.
Do you have any question on the distribution of open space and the accessibility throughout the
Mhm.
community?
Yeah, there are,
Okay.
yeah. And this really is looking for that. I just wanted to be sure where housing had that. We weren't just giving a weapon to anyone who wanted to stop housing
I think
on
they
any
got
open
it.
space.
Yeah, to Sandra's point, I do think like, if I read that question, it feels like am I anti-environment and open space if I say no to that. So I definitely think some context is helpful. And then to your point, like, can we actually do something if people do say, yeah, I want a lot of open space in my neighborhood?
Somebody who
can't.
lives in this area might
Yeah.
say no. Somebody who lives in the area further up where there's more open space, he might say, sure.
Yeah.
I have a lot of space around me.
Yeah, or this area, they'll say yes, but then like, we couldn't respond to it, so it's. Yeah.
Kelsey, will we have an opportunity to look at the revised question before?
So there's two things that you can do at this point. One is send further written comments, and that would go to Silken and to the consultants. And the other is we are going to see it in the formatted version instead of the Word version. So you will have another chance to comment on it in that version. I don't know if that'll be a discussion at a meeting or if that will be something that is also a written response, but you'll have at least one written response and potentially two written responses, if not one written and one at a meeting.
Okay. I'll send it
Yeah.
out to.
Is it possible to share that with the committee and we could individually give you feedback?
That would be great.
Yeah. Did anyone do I think there was like a active transportation surveys for South Burlington, and
Mhm.
I loved the format of that. I thought it was really engaging and like just the design of it. Had you prioritize things. I went through it a couple times because thought it was really cool, but I would just, yeah, recommend that as kind of a resource to look at different ways of formatting questions, so it's not so binary of yes and no.
Was
Yeah, so
that
there's
done
a-
by the Regional Planning Commission?
No, that was
No.
internal here. And it's
Oh.
not the same consultant that's doing this this work. So I think the format will look different just because
Yeah.
they're using different platforms and things. I will say most of the questions in this survey are not yes, no. There's 3 or 4 that are yes, no, out of the whole list. And then there's some things that you won't get. You won't get certain questions if you say yes, no on, do you, the logic in the surveys. Like, do you go to this park? Yes, no. And if you say no, you won't get any more questions about certain things. That sort of idea. So that's all I was pointing out, is that there's a lot of other things that do have, there's 30 things and you can choose however many you want, or there's, this many parks and, what.
And this is, and what's the actual question that you're trying to gather? Like, what's the question? Like, we wanna survey the public to find out.
So there's 2 plans that are coming out of this, 2 master plans. One is a parks master plan and one is an open space master plan. So they are smashed together into one process because they are related and they do
Mhm.
sort of interact. But the intention is that you have 2 different plans in the end. So this is the very sort of opening of the public engagement, and it's very generally, thoughts about those
Okay.
2 things, recreation and parks and open space and natural areas and all of those things in South Burlington. So it is a
Yeah.
quite broad,
Right,
quite
okay.
pretty 40,000 foot level. It's not like, well, no, there's some specific questions.
Is
Yeah.
open space defined on that? I think that was.
So there's
Yeah.
that they discussed as well as, because in some places it says open space / natural areas, and trying to be precise with language, but also accessible. So that's something that they are working on.
How is it to be conducted? I mean, how are potential respondents going to be?
Yeah, it's several ways. They're going to have some focus groups, but it's going to be open. And there are several versions of it that can be done on at public meetings. And the group is going to go, I guess, our professionals are working in this, and staff, I'm sure, are going to go to some of the public gatherings and tell people about it. I'd like to have you answer it. Here's the URL for you to click on in order to give us your answer. We've worried before about some groups pushing very hard for a survey to be done among its membership, and not pushing hard elsewhere. And so we got a particular bias in a survey that was done a couple of years ago. And I heard from some members that they were actually encouraged to do it several times. And so open space became a very.
That's something I don't, I'm sorry, so okay, make a comment. I have asked at several council meetings that we work to, when we're doing surveys, which we get a lot of input from for decisions and policy decisions that are made, that we start to identify unique users. Because I know I asked that question with the city plan. I think I've asked it with a couple other surveys, and because there are real-time events, there's online events, and that often you're getting, you know, the same person's feedback 4 times and in different venues, let alone the same venue. So I hope that's something that will get the discipline of unique users.
He said
Yes.
they could do that.
Mhm.
He said it would become obvious if the same user was filling it out separately. I don't know how.
That's considered double dipping.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I know, it's, I think it's.
Well, you
So
said
they
you
can
could do
screen-
that. I think that should be a condition.
They are doing that. They're screening for IP addresses. And the idea is that if you see if you see 2 at a residential IP address, makes sense that it could be 2 people living in the household. If you see 10, makes less sense. And then the only places that they would say like it makes sense for there to be more than that would be the library and potentially the schools as sort of places where people access the internet. So that's how they screen for users individually, because then people don't have to provide any other information, and you could hypothetically have 3 or 4 people who answer identically. It's the probability is low, but it's possible. So that was how they were saying is they trace IP addresses.
Will we be able to know, will they be asked what part of the city
Yes.
so I would be listening for, as you read it, and I've seen this happen before where there's like a binary question and how people could potentially use the answer to certain types of questions to further certain goals. And sometimes because of the way you ask a question, you don't get anything else but a yes or no on a certain area. So it's not nuanced enough, right? So like, I'll just use the dog survey as it was only really targeted to one population, and anybody who had a problem with the way things were happening never had any way to, unless they did comments, and that data was then used to say, oh, people need more, but their questions were, it wasn't professionally done. And the data was so biased. And I don't know whether if it's been figured into any actual policy, but it sounds like this is like a company that actually does surveying for, that's their whole, you really have to use those folks because you can't, because is it measuring? That's why I asked the question of what's the hope? Because you have to have questions that are actually measuring the thing that you want to know. You can't just blanket the world with questions and things that are of interest.
The people working on elections, said they will claim accurate representation. That is that it'll be accurate, and it will represent women,
Right.
people of color, each neighbor.
Yeah, you can't.
So we're not,
Yeah,
it's
we can't
this,
necessarily do that.
it's
What
the
about
same,
city as a whole?
it's the same thing that we've
Even if
done.
they-
It's the same thing that happens with all of our city surveys is we're not running a census. It's not sort of
Yeah.
at that level of representative sample that can be sort of extrapolated to a whole population. It is, and I believe it will be used, and my understanding is it will be used in the same way that we used surveys and other public comment for the city plan and for LDR amendments, that it is individual anecdotes and it's qualitative data, not quantitative.
Okay.
So it's, oh, there is a person who bikes from South Village to, go to Veterans Park to play soccer. Like, that's one person's experience that will not be extrapolated to mean like, oh, one person out of the 200 who filled out the survey
Okay.
means that there's 100 people that do that.
Yeah, okay,
Because
thank
that's,
you.
yeah, statistically, it doesn't.
Doesn't work.
And I felt like I had to cover for Vince in that meeting and didn't disclose his professional background. I'm sitting there going,
Magneto.
mhm.
Does it ask about, do people feel we're doing a good, something like this, are we doing a good job of maintaining?
There are questions in here about. The slides.
So
I'm trying.
I'm just gonna say, you're gonna send it to us, right? And we're all gonna get to read it, and then we're gonna send. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of interest in this room, yeah. I mean, I'm glad, Megan, Sandy, I don't know, maybe you're not so much, I don't know if you want more work to do.
I'm gonna look at other.
Or Kelsey's like, oh my God, I don't wanna answer one more question about this, but.
You guys can read it and provide feedback to Vince.
When is the feedback needed? Cause you mentioned like, oh, there's, right now you could just
Yeah,
make
could
draft
we-
comments. I just wanna think about the timeline that we're reviewing this in a way that it funnels into what's already going on.
So there isn't another formal like deadline for this. This is the deadline has already gone past for sort of community to advisory group members, like Vince is the representative from this committee. So if Vince is bringing back something that you all want to review further, then you can absolutely do that. It's just, it will have to be as soon as possible. Sorry.
And then Vince will just.
It's good, we're good.
We got enough?
Yeah.
We should probably just, I'll send it to, if you have time, I'll look at it, and this is the printed format. Get back to me as soon as possible.
Are you thinking it's public?
Sure.
So.
I actually don't think they are.
Really?
They're no, it's an executive task force. So it is not technically a
So I
public
couldn't
meeting.
watch it on Zoom.
It is
No.
not, they're not online, no.
So this is our chance. All right, so I'm gonna, anybody else have an announcement?
Just briefly, well, one, just a comment on this, one of the goals I think council had was to get committees interacting more too, so this is a good example that I think this committee has an interest and opportunity and has a concern that maybe something's presented in a way that trade-offs are implied that aren't intended. One thing was, I guess, thanks and congratulations on the budget passing. So the trust, the housing trust has been funded with the 30,000. That's good. No, 75,000, 75. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to serve another 2 years. Two quick things. One was I saw a story that was done about ADUs in Austin, Texas, and they were being used for an extension of the home for a small business. So it was not manufacturing, but more just an office space, but allowing people to live in smaller properties, 12 to 1,300 square feet for a family, but augmenting the space to be business. And I don't know if we ever contemplated ADUs serving a business purpose in South Burlington, or if there's a limitation to that, but that may,
The state law doesn't.
it doesn't.
allow it.
Okay.
No.
So
I
we
mean-
treat it differently. It's not technically an ADU, it's a mixed use building.
Okay,
You can have a building that has a commercial use and apartments or additional sort of residential use on in the building.
The story that was covered was it was ADUs as we define them here, had a business purpose, but it enhanced two things, economic development, but it also, kind of complemented the living space. And then the last thing was some preliminary results have been shared from Civic Soul, who is doing the economic development strategic plan, supporting that work. They'll be coming back in May. They did a lot of input from a pretty diverse group of stakeholders in the city. And I think there's some information. Have you seen that, Kelsey, the Civic Soul high-level summary?
No.
I saw it last night, and I think Tom's gonna talk about it a little bit.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
bottom line is I do think there'll be information that this group will be interested in receiving on that. Because it does talk about the housing needs of workforce housing primarily. And sort of the draws to this area. But that was really it for me.
I have a question on the mixed use.
Mhm.
Where do we draw the line for having a residence home, let's say I'm a doctor or I'm a PT person, or I'm an accountant, or and I use one bedroom as an office. I converted it to an office. However, though, it's my home.
Yeah, so there's a few different things. There's home occupation, which is like, you know, I make brownies for a living and I cook it in my kitchen. And, you know, that's, you can have you know, operate a business from your home. There's another level up from that. That's something like a commercial accountant who has, you know, company clients. So they maybe once in a while have a client come to their house, but it's not sort of every day. And then above that is the like hair salon, doctor's office, whatever that or massage therapist that, you know, converted a garage or something. That's above that. And you can't just operate that out of your home as a home occupation or a home business. So that would have to be permitted as a commercial use. So well, no, the lower scale neighborhoods in the city, so most of the single family home neighborhoods, you couldn't have that at this point.
Interesting.
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
other
no.
interesting thing about these ADUs in Austin is there are companies that are really doing kits,
Mhm.
kind of prefab kits. So that might be worth part of our education outreach of letting people know where there might be issues, kind of getting builders or contractors that you can look at a lot of different plans for kits that would meet the requirements and it require a lot less labor and they're kind of, you know, it can be customizable to some degree, but it was a very interesting.
Kelsey, in the form-based code district,
Mhm.
use is not regulated. right?
Unless it's prohibited, yeah.
Unless it's prohibited,
Yep.
so could you have a business in your home?
Not a home occupation. There's specific state statute rules
Ah,
about home occupations.
So
Yeah.
there's other-
So if
There's-
it's-
There's other stuff and yeah, home occupation is considered a use, so you're not a doctor's office, you're a home occupation.
Mhm.
So it's, anyway.
so if it's
Mhm.
in the corner,
Mhm.
and they can, let's say, the owner of that house, convert that in-law corner into an office
Mhm.
for his business, whether he's an accountant, whether he's a doctor, whether he's
It
a
depends.
PT professional, whether.
So a lot of it depends on like, are clients coming to you? There's all these definitions about all these things. Do you have clients coming there? Do you require a sign outside or do you not? Like, there's sort of a whole scale of these things. Yeah. So it really depends.
So it depends on the traffic, if there is
Yeah.
traffic coming
Yeah,
in.
I think that's a consideration.
Yep.
Is
Yeah.
traffic.
Traffic, parking. You know, people,
Wow.
yeah, if you're just quietly doing your accounting and all you do is talk to people on the phone and Zoom, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick observation from someone to me 2 days ago. He's looking for housing in San Francisco and can pay anywhere from $1 to $5 or $10 million. He
Wow.
has been able to schedule a viewing along with more than 100 people who were all approved by the bank previously to be able to afford a house like that. And they only got one viewing, putting up their, searching in the way that they did in San Francisco.
For 100 people, for 100 candidates.
I don't know how they picked them, but they saw it, they didn't want it. It had water in that cellar, for God's sake.
Mhm.
Can you believe that?
But
And there was
they got
several million.
one invitation,
They got
To
one
one house.
bite,
one bite.
yeah. Anyway, just, Ryan has his hand up.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
want to tell you, someplace
Right.
like that.
Brian?
Can you see/hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up with Nora and Vance about the survey as well. The Parks Committee had a lot of on Monday night, they had a lot of similar discussion around those two words being combined into the same questions because they do mean different things in a literal way, and also different people prefer them to different amounts. So I'll probably just follow up on email.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thanks.
Let last announcement, you had one?
Just wanted to highlight, so we're working with CVOEO on this Fair Housing Month. That department in CVOEO just lost a significant amount of funding that was contracted to them. It's about 80% of their funding, and they serve the whole state with fair housing education. So I just want to make people aware of that. Because I have heard discussion on the state level of like, people really need more resources around fair housing. I know I've gone through the process before. It's very intimidating. It feels like you're kind of put out there in a risky situation. And so people are really hesitant to speak up. And so they were talking about, you know, interviewing people who have done it to kind of give them an idea of, you know, what that looks like and what you entail. But I just want to bring attention to that issue. Because I think it just happened in the last couple of weeks or so.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
think forgotten about that. I wanted to make sure. people
Yeah,
did.
that grant's like 80% of the funding, and they were already
This was specific
contracted.
to education.
The Fair Housing
Fair housing,
Project.
right.
there it
It's
is.
federal
Yeah.
funding. in case
Yeah.
you didn't guess.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Now that you mentioned the federal
Yeah.
funding,
Yeah.
it make all sense now. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
There is a, Mike Pichek, is sponsoring a seminar or a kind of a city hall march, this Saturday, actually. Here in the community, in the auditorium. And he's gonna be talking about, so the implications of federal grants that might be at risk. But my understanding is the state has about close to 40 billion of funding of federal grants for healthcare, Medicaid and Medicare and education, housing and infrastructure. So I'll be attending that. I'm anxious to hear what his take up is.
And what time is that at?
I think I can check,
Okay.
but he'll be doing it around the state a few
Okay.
times.
So
mentioned 40 billion.
Mhm.
Or billion.
37.7 billion or
40, okay.
47.
37.
37.
Yeah, I believe, yeah.
Wow.
So anything you want to have to report, anything?
I just wanted to say the planning commission has been further working on the form-based code updates. They'll be seeing it again at their March 25th meeting. The intention, is either on the 25th of March or the first meeting in April, which I believe is the 11th. They'll approve a sort of 90% draft of it that then will be circulated to other stakeholders, so both internally and externally. So committees, our development review staff, our community development director, all of these things internally, but then also to our big property owners and stakeholders externally, the large developers that have been working in this area, the U-Mall owners, people like that. And there would be about a 5-ish week lead time of people being able to respond and propose changes or provide feedback of any kind. So the idea is that sort of end of March, so approximately by mid-May, that feedback would be due back to them, to the planning commission, for them to formally move for a public hearing, set it for public hearing, which then puts the public hearing somewhere in mid-June, barring big delays.
Okay.
So I will both be updating all of you with that when we get to that point, and also just keeping you an eye on that timeline for where we are.
And I do have a correction. I'll send this out to people. It's almost 38% of the total revenues in 22. But Vermont's about 11% higher than the national average. So it's more in the 3 billion, but it's of a total of 9 billion. I'll send this out to folks.
Great, thank you so much.
Has the planning commission heard arguments on basements for 80%?
No, we're working on sort of this bigger chunk of form-based code amendments. Also, that will be going at into the same round of amendments are supporting uses in the commercial areas, updating the table of uses to streamline uses instead of having a million categories, making it make a little more sense. And also minor and technical amendments, of which there's a good sized little pile of small things that are either we've heard from the public or from committees or recommended by staff from review that will all be sort of thrown into the pile a little bit later in the process. Yep.
Random question, is
Sure.
anyone taking minutes or notes today?
I'm taking notes, but they're not exhaustive.
No, minutes don't have to be.
Larry would.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah,
I can,
but he's out of town apparently.
I've been,
Either,
you've been taking a few notes.
Yeah.
I've been taking a couple of notes, not sort
Okay.
of exhaustive notes, but
okay. I
just
can
the sort of
take notes.
topics raised, if you have notes of that, that's
Yeah.
sufficient for minutes.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. no
Yeah,
problem.
okay. I mean, I've already written down
Yeah,
everything.
that's what I-
recorded. I've already done
Yeah.
topics. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
figured
thank
it
you.
out.
It's.
Do you have a staff report?
That
she
was
just
it.
gave
Just about
Just gave it. Did
That's all-
anybody
that's all I've
have-
got.
And the minutes, I didn't get a chance to review the minutes, were they?
You can move them forward, you can
Let's-
just push them to the next meeting
Let's
if you
push them-
don't.
Yeah, let's push them to the next meeting.
Okay.
Fair Housing Month update. Anything you want to say about the book event?
No, but. Nor something. Sure.
Nice.
So we're gonna start handing it out, I guess. Distributing it.
That's fantastic.
Struggling to hear Vance.
What's that?
What's that, Ryan?
Couldn't hear Vance when he started to respond to you.
Oh, he's, okay, do you want to say it again?
Yeah, I'm just holding up a brochure for the book discussion on the housing crisis is the title of the book. And it'll be Wednesday, the 16th from 6:30 to 8 in the library.
So it should be, I sent it to Mira and she has another, she's putting it on her calendar. I'm sending it to I didn't. A different graphic that's going to CBO, EO, and then, Mira sent us a list of other people to send things to. I've got to call into, the other paper and.
Did you give it to Andy? Andy Brumbaugh is the communications manager for
Oh,
the
no.
city.
Yeah,
I'll send you his email.
great.
He
great.
he can get it, onto the city calendar, the
Great.
city news, all
Okay.
that stuff.
Okay.
We should post on Facebook.
He can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jess will lead the discussion, Jess, I'm.
I hope we don't lose her.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the display is a display that was in the library last year, and I have the one that we did look from last year. I'm gonna update it, with some of the CBOEO materials. And so that will go in the library. Hopefully they have some signage because they actually do, CBOEO does a lot on Fair Housing Month. So I mean, I don't know if this was affected by the funding, but my last communication was that they were gonna do like a Friday series. They're sort of still in the process of putting that together. So there's a lot of things, just check their calendar because there's a lot of things that are either online or actual events. And they did say that they could do a renters workshop for us. And so, well, that was before the funding stuff. I don't know. I'm gonna, yeah,
Jeff said once she announced that the funding issue, it's a Housing and Homeless Alliance meeting that I went to on Monday, and right after that, she plugged for Fair Housing Month, so I don't think they're pulling back on any of those
Okay.
activities.
okay.
It's just-
Yeah, so in my discussion with one of the members there is that we could do both, what are your rights as a renter? And then just some of the nuts and bolts around renting, and so I thought combining those topics of what are my rights as a renter? And more tilted towards renter versus obviously landlord, but she said that's usually a pretty popular workshop. Sometimes it's offered online, but I thought we would do it in person, and I'm gonna look at some dates in the spring, see when they're available, for like maybe May or June.
Just quickly jumping in, I believe everybody should have got this email, but Phoenix Books is carrying a couple of copies. They did bring a couple of copies in of the book. And if anyone wanted to order a copy, if they ran out, or if you just wanted to order one instead, like you just can let them know, or you can let me know and I can let them know. So if anyone is, I haven't heard from anybody about being interested, but if you were, just let me know.
Kindle version for Fortnite.
There you go.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna stop at the store,
What's that?
go to Phoenix.
Go check them out. Go see what's going on.
I
Yeah.
might call and make sure the two haven't been sold.
Right.
And I really encourage, it's been, the last years that we've done it, it's been a very interesting conversation, so I highly recommend it. Okay. Any more questions or thoughts about, oh, the other, actually, here's the last thing, it's not on here, but,
The resolution?
the resolution, so you can do that, is that right? Or do
Well,
you,
typically, somebody from the committee would come.
Okay.
And I can, I mean, I can ask Colin to redraft. Chris, did you have Colin draft something for last year, or is that just one you had?
We drafted it, ran it by Jesse. I don't know if Jesse had take a look at it, but it was blessed for the cities before we probably.
Well, I think didn't we do it in 2023 and then we just changed the dates last year,
That's correct.
so,
And then 2023, I think we got it from the national.
yes.
Mhm. The one from 23 to 24 was just changing the date.
okay,
Sure.
I completely forgot
I
about that
know.
resolution.
Dates and names.
Dates and
That's right.
If somebody wants to send me the old, or actually, it should be on
It'll
it's on
be-
the resolutions,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
I can ask Colin and Jesse to take a look at it.
okay, all right,
And what's our target meeting for that? So we have a meeting, March 17th, and then there'll be a.
probably during April,
The end of,
end of March.
End of
First
March.
April. First April. The last one is Monday, right? That's your
For
second
March.
one, it's for March,
Yeah, that's right, it is.
unless you don't count the one night before meeting. You count.
you only have one in March.
We had a reconfiguration one on Thursday,
Yeah.
at town meeting,
Yes.
so.
So you'll have one on April 7th. Is it the first Monday of the
Yeah,
month?
it
Yeah,
would-
so it'd be
yeah.
April 7th.
So is that adequate to present it then?
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's the best we can do.
It is in stock. Sandy,
What?
it is in stock. I just checked.
Oh, okay.
The other piece was, do we want to, with regards to Fair Housing Month, write anything on a housing topic with the hope of getting it into the other paper? Like a guest perspective, and does anybody have a topic that they feel particularly interested in or animated by, right? That would be, that they would be interested, because I think, we haven't, an event, but I think also talking about fair housing and maybe taking a specific angle and discussing about what it might mean to our community and why it's important could be pretty fruitful. Kind of like a pro-housing message.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be up pretty soon for a Counselor Corner message, but
Mhm.
I'm not sure I'm gonna be the right person to draft it.
Okay.
Cause I'm being burdened with the Longview project
Yeah, yeah,
changing, so I'm not sure that's the
That's
best
fine.
message to send.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, a couple of us could write things,
Sure.
right? And what kind of
And you really
topic?
want to focus on.
But this is my concern is. When we have such a low vacancy rate, it really undermines the capacity to make fair housing work. People are afraid to report anything because. You can be evicted for no cause. And where do you go?
That's a
Mhm.
good point.
So low vacancy rates are really
Scary.
bad for fair housing. I mean, I don't know if we want to write that, but it's true.
Well, I mean, I think that loops back to the greater discussion of why more housing? Because more housing allows a lower or higher vacancy rate, or higher vacancy rate. And it allows people not to be in situations where they're victimized,
Mhm,
right? Or
yeah.
in substandard housing or situations that are difficult for them.
Maybe they
Um,
have a land or a property manager or whatever who harasses them,
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
So that could be part, I don't know how many words you would get to discuss that, but again, these elements of fair housing, if and it just doesn't have to fall on one person, if a couple of people would want to have a subcommittee and say, we want to write, work together and write something. I think that would be a great, at least one guest perspective for the other paper, if they're willing to do that for us.
So
Yeah.
the topic would be something why more
Relevant.
housing is simple.
Yeah, and relevant to
why
fair
housing
housing,
is
yeah,
essential.
why housing and,
I'll do that.
okay. And would
Some
you
of
want to
those
work
on
with,
it.
Yeah, I haven't done one before, but I'm definitely interested, and so I would rather do it with someone first.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's what I'll send you a note.
Okay.
Thank you.
It might be good to include, I know we talked about this at some point, doing an update on the rental registry, but we could get some anecdotal information from Steve Locke to
Mhm.
include.
Yeah.
So here's how many units are registered, here's how many inspections have occurred. I think the education around what the common findings are, which to my understanding are largely, updated fire and carbon monoxide alarms and GFI outlets, and not horrendous, but I know the last council meeting, there was a report that, one problem property had actually been rectified and,
That could maybe have its
Yeah,
own
maybe
article.
yeah, I
could
do
do
feel
a-
like it could be. its
Yeah,
own
it
article,
could be its own
Or
article.
you could do a good news, bad news. The good news is what the registry is doing. The bad news is the low vacancy rate.
Yeah.
Puts people in a difficult position.
Yeah, I would kind of think the successes, we would really want to really
Mhm.
sort of highlight the successes
Okay.
I mean, because this is an important thing and really highlighting people doing the right, not the right thing, but keeping,
Yeah.
highlighting safe housing.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And also maybe Steve would wanna write something because they have the data.
That's true, yeah, I don't know.
And it's
how
the
often
first anniversary
that
paper
really
first, I
writes
believe.
Such an
maybe I
advantage.
could reach out to Steve and see what his ideas are and,
Well, there may be just even more to
Yeah.
come, but a little bit of an angle.
yeah.
This is going on at the same time and
Mhm. Okay.
Low vacancy rate of rates,
Oh, the
like the
prices.
rental rate,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
like a 1 bedroom, 1,600,
Mhm.
1,800, or it's like, where you guys going? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's higher than inflation, right? You just keep pushing it up. Okay. Any other thoughts about things we'd like to see for Fair Housing Month?
I'm glad you brought that up, having an article.
Yeah, it's part of this idea of I want pro-housing conversations out in the world, right? We want, consistent messaging. It's not, yeah, as opposed to kind of reacting to the problem.
I'm curious about how much the average rental person has to pay to bring their house up to code, their apartment up to code. Then the owner has to pay. I'm just curious about it. And it's not necessarily a positive thing.
Yeah, I can talk to you about that. Yeah,
Well, and the other thing that I
that's on what
just
it is.
has,
Yeah.
yeah, the other thing that's been noted is that the first phase of the rental registry has generally been like publicizing the rental registry and then people self-reporting. Like I have a rental unit, so the vast majority that have been registered so far are sort of the good actors that have been registering their own units. It is tipping over at some point around now into the pursuing the people who have not voluntarily done that. And so we'll see where that goes. But I think you could have some pretty skewed data of like, oh, it took me $40 to put in a carbon monoxide detector. And that's because it's someone who voluntarily came forward and said, I have a rental unit.
My daughter was renting a condo at Person Farms. She had to pay almost $1,000 to put in fairly new unit, 20 years old. Takes very good care of it. To put in GFI's ground fault injectors for her garbage disposal, which led to this, which led to that, and the downstairs breaker box.
Yep.
And we rent the house to our son-in-law, and he's coming tomorrow. At 5 o'clock meeting, and I'm afraid he's going to say you've got to put sheetrock behind these stairs, which we had to do at my daughter's house, and what a pain.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of move on to the housing trust fund discussion.
Yes. So just at a high level, I'll send this and I'll expect that we'll make I don't think there's an expectation we take any action today, but just some preliminary kind of research, like what are other towns doing, right? Like I think that's kind of the first barometer of like are we in line with other folks, or are we kind of leading the way? If you look at the city of Winooski, they have a pretty robust program. They weight their scores for their applications, and they score up to 120% of AMI. Burlington scores, they also score their applications, but they have a ceiling of 80%. So that's consistent with South Burlington. City of Montpelier scores up to 100%. They also score their applications. Interestingly, the more and more I look at policy for affordable housing, I keep getting drawn into Somerville, Massachusetts, Cambridge, Mass as well. But Somerville did, they have a very impressive program, and I included that, but they go up to 110%. And they have a fantastic program. Something for us to strive towards, but just some competitive analysis. So
What are the things you like about? There's the question.
they have a strategic vision of how they're going to use the money, and in that strategic vision, they have what their approach is going to be, what the goals are. They have an expanded eligible uses, so it's not just creation of brand new housing. So traditionally, we've used, from what I understand, the Housing Trust Fund is it's really gap funding for a project to help. At any time, like especially like if you're looking at pro forma and you're doing your stack of funding sources, getting to 100% is difficult, and this is meant to kind of buy down what you have to finance elsewhere. They have eligible uses that go beyond just new construction. It includes weatherization, refurbishing of existing buildings, just very, very exciting stuff. But the scope of what we're talking about, I think, is just 120%, but like there's more we can do it. So when we say area median income, I think it's important that we're looking at, so VHFA is kind of the website, that's kind of the standard. So an income threshold by household size for Chittenden County, Franklin and Grand Isles. That's kind of the MSA that
Statistical area, yeah.
reference in our intro meeting, but VHFA defines Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle, 100% AMI for a 1-person household is, any guesses? What do you think? Just medium?
One person household?
One person household.
I think it's 1,100 for a rental.
Annual.
price?
Are you
Yeah.
talking about annual income?
Oh, annual, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
No, it's gotta be way higher.
Seventy.
Yeah.
83, 300.
Right, one human supporting one human?
One person,
Household,
one person household.
83,100.
That's the median.
Median,
83,000.
is the median.
Median.
Oh,
For a
okay,
one
okay,
person.
okay.
Yes, so it's 100%. Two person is 95,000. So, we're talking 40 to 45 bucks an hour. That's, so if it's a one bedroom, rent, right, it's $2,100 for a one bedroom,
For what income level?
100% and
100% for, and you said one bedroom?
And this is the
$2,100.
Chittenden County.
Chittenden County, Grand Island, Franklin County. That is the,
So that,
max gross rent affordable, which includes utilities, because rent is different. It's about $100. That's, most people, like, if you're a longtime homeowner, I bought my house way back when, and like, you think $2,100, how does anybody afford that? Exactly, that's why we're having this conversation. And so if you were to buy a one bedroom home, those don't really exist, so maybe we talk about a two bedroom home. It's $304,000. That's the medium, affordable for 100%.
That's for two bed.
Yeah. Yeah, so just, that's, I don't know, just, I think
how
that
much
was
did
just
you say for two bedroom?
304.
And for a three bedroom.
What I think about there.
You think?
Yeah, it is low.
As a freestanding single family? Or a condo,
Max purchase price that is affordable.
so that would be either a condo or.
So that would, so if it was a condo, that would include HOA fees, that would. But where do you find a house for 304? Do they exist? No.
I know, I was gonna say, you could probably get a condo.
Well, unless you have a CHA participation, then you might be able.
Yeah, so maybe you have to leverage some down payment assistance and that buys it down so you don't have to pay PMI.
Correct.
So that's
The
just,
good portion will be maybe 60% of that value. And the other 40 will go towards the participation entity, who's gonna participate towards the purchase. CHA, for example.
if you can find somebody that contributes that much, God bless, or if they have funding that's left. So I just wanted to kind of set kind of a baseline of that's 100% AMI, and it's the rent. It's a lot, and you don't find houses for 3 or 4. It's just that they don't really exist.
Houses.
Yeah, let alone that. So then, so if you go up to 120%, which kind of what I was saying, it's 99,000 for annual income for a one person household, or 114 for a 2 person household, and that goes up to 320 for a 1 bedroom or 384 for a 2 bedroom. So that's just. That's where we kind of dip into this missing middle conversation a little bit of, we know it's not just about. There's a little bit of soapboxing, but it's not just about, do we have enough housing at, the AMI levels, at 80% and lower, but when someone, where do they move to, when they, have an increase in income?
Maybe finish some kind of educational program,
That's
get a better job.
That's right. It's, we live in a continuum of life, and, you can go up the ladder, you can go down the ladder. So having a place to move up to, is important, because that backfills and that frees up housing for others.
Let's jump in and say that my understanding is a lot of residents of affordable housing are on fixed incomes. A
Yes.
lot are disabled, so they're not gonna be doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
affordability.
Yeah.
So that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, like, you know, there's. The percentage, the likelihood of, you go from a fixed income.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
it's a majority. That are on fixed, in elderly, I would say, but I don't think it's a majority in the. In the affordable housing that's built around here, that are on fixed income.
Well,
Yeah.
The ones that are on fixed incomes almost always have Section 8 certificates. Because they need to be subsidized way down and I don't think the majority of most developments are. Section 8,
Family affordable housing.
yeah. I mean, they all have, pretty much all, I think, have Section 8, but not most of the units. There's a lot of working people
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
in affordable housing.
Yeah, I
speaking
just
of,
think that afford mobility, like to your
Yeah.
point, is not as realistic as
It's-
achievable as.
Yeah, it's not representative of total population and all
No.
that population.
But it happens.
speaking, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
speaking of the jobs, how many people work or how much money they make? How about if we do the reverse calculation instead of saying, okay, a 2-bedroom might go up to 380, 400K. How about we say how many people live in Cheney County, let's say 100, how many of those 100,000 make up to 50? How many they are making between 50 and 60? How many they are making between 60 and 80? How many they are making over 100? This way we have a statistical information to compare on the price value of the houses. So if, let's say, 60% of the 100,000 make less than 60,000, and the prices of the housing is more of 350 and plus, do you believe that 60% can afford the 360,000 plus housing? The answer is no, because it will be very difficult. Only the other 40% might be able to, will make 80 or more. Less than 4%, I'm just giving you an example. So perhaps we can do the reverse calculation.
Yeah, no, but what that gets at is like also supply, right? So if you were to look at what's the proportion of people within certain income ranges, and what's the proportion of houses being built in ranges that then those folks could afford, right? So is there a mismatch between, okay, we've got a certain number of folks in this income range, but the houses are actually in this higher, to your point, range, and how do you, well, is it useful, right? Or how do you get this number closer to this, affordability over here?
That's because the demand is so high
Yeah,
and the prices,
right,
it got skyrocketed, and every owner is like, hey, I go by the market, $2,200 2-bedroom apartment, example. You might need.
Yeah,
you
so
know,
and we're
three people working to afford
Yeah.
that.
We're partially assuming that if there was more, that people would, I'm not saying this wouldn't happen, but we're partially assuming that just more supply would lower prices, but I'm not sure
Not
if that's actually true. I don't know if that, I can't imagine somebody dropping, it just would make,
It might
Yeah.
make the upward trend.
yeah,
much
People are getting.
Well,
living
yeah,
here.
yeah.
level.
You'll level it out, but
That neighbor is charging X dollar a month. How come he's charging X dollar a month? I might as well do that too, you
Yeah.
know?
I know.
That's what's
I feel it.
happening.
Yeah. So would your suggestion, or should we consider as a housing committee, moving things up towards, what would be the pros and cons of moving the AMI up to, because we could do that, right, with the housing trust. We can decide or propose, the way it would go is we would propose to the city council, and then the city council would have to change it, but we could make a recommendation
Yes.
around AMI, so,
I do have just a couple other.
Yeah, okay,
points
go
just for context, so.
Yeah.
What are some existing housing programs in the state that has 120% AMI ceiling for eligibility? So, for example, VHFA has a missing middle income program. that provides financial incentives and resources support to construction or rehabilitation of homes for purchase by Vermont developers. VHFA has a rental revolving loan fund funded by the Home Act that creates a revolving fund and preservation of rental housing for middle income households earning between 65 and 150% of AMI. VHFA, again, great resource, has a Hive program, minimum 50% of affordable housing units serving households below 80% AMI and affordability not to exceed 120% AMI for market rate units. So Efficiency Vermont has some incentives for households up to low to moderate income households. They have their own schedule. Doesn't align 100%, but there's a lot of overlap. VHEB, who's one of the primary funding sources for affordable housing projects, supports rental housing for Vermonters up to 100% AMI and home ownership for Vermonters up to 120% AMI. VSHA has a mobile home info program where income eligible home buyers must be at or below 120% AMI. I can go on. There's some more, but I think you kind of get the hint that there's existing programs that are out there. So while we may not see projects currently, there are funding sources where those are projects that would go up to that higher limit that could benefit from a city subsidy. So I'll send that around to folks. It was cool to see that, okay, Burlington does 80%, but Montpelier's at 100, Roussey's at 120%. So that it's not 80% is the only thing that you can do. And Kelsey, like, when you see, maybe if you could add some narrative of some projects that we've seen recently, like they're not exclusively this income level. They might be, they could be mixed. There's some market rate, there's some subsidy. Like,
Yeah,
what have you
so
seen?
so generally speaking, recently, there hasn't, I'm trying to think if there's been anything that's 100% for a full project as affordable, and I don't think so. O'Brien Farm up on the hill by Kennedy Drive, they've been working with Summit, so they have buildings that are individually all affordable, and they're affordable from, I think, 0% through 80%, sort of different units in the buildings, and a certain number of each of those at different scales. But then those are used as the affordable units for other buildings and the single family homes and other things that are around it. The same is true with these buildings here. The first or second building that was built was the affordable housing to sort of satisfy for the rest of it. That's a CHT building. Otherwise there's been applications for the units to be integrated into the building, which was more of the intention, that there'd be sort of, you wouldn't know because it would be market rate next door to affordable. But yeah, so like, for example, the Bourne Auto project, the corner of Swift and Shelburne, that's proposed to be a single building that has affordable units in it, along with market rate units. Those are the big things recently.
That's just kind of help
Yep.
paint
Mhm.
more context that
Yep.
they're mixed income buildings
Yep.
at different price points.
Mixed income buildings, mixed income areas. We require that the buildings they can look different, but they can't be noticeably different in quality.
Same structure.
What's that?
Same structure.
Yeah. Yeah, so they can, like, the units can technically be smaller units, but like they're on the same hallway. They're in a building that on the outside looks the same, or, whatever it is. The finishes can be a little bit less, like there's different things that people do.
One more additional incentive to the programs you mentioned. There is the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, FHLB. They offer grants for new Americans or first generation Americans, home buyers, people of color, they have certain criteria. And the grant, it could go up to 50,000.
Mm.
Yeah, it all depends on
Per unit or within?
per
the
home.
project?
Per
So an
home.
individual would apply. for it.
So yeah,
Yeah.
if a couple or a person, individual likes
Yeah.
to buy a house and he's a first time buyer, he's a first generation American, let's say he is a person of color or he belongs to a certain, I don't know,
Yeah.
there's certain criteria
Yeah.
there. And also how much he makes annually, there's a limit there. If you exceed that limit, you're not eligible. But if HLBB can grant you up to 50K towards that purchase. That's significant dollar amount, I will say.
Compensate for all the lack of that.
Yeah, I mean,
Accessibility in the past.
especially, let's say you need 20% down on a $350 or $400,000 loan, it's 80,000 over there, so it's a big chunk of
Mhm.
down payment.
There was something similar in the housing
Yes.
information you
Yeah,
said.
there's a lot, I mean,
It was tax credits.
our legislature is. Well, it's.
Speaking of tax
proposing a
credits,
lot.
when you're a first time buyer, there's a credit, tax credit that you get when you write off your house, as a first time buyer, that is, so you get a significant discount there.
So you're gonna send us more? Is that what you said, Chris? What would
So,
you?
Because I didn't have my things together, I didn't have a like a handout, and I didn't get it out with time to kind of digest it, so
Mhm.
today was just more of a conversation, so
Mhm.
I have compiled that, I'd like to kind of send that out to folks, let you kind of ask some, give some critical thought of, what are my concerns about this, and is this a good fit for South Burlington? And when we look at what's our total fund right now, 370 something, or
Mhm.
do we want to handcuff ourselves to projects up to 85% or give us the flexibility to consider a broader scope of, that doesn't mean that, that the dollars are all allocated to a certain project. They could be multiple applications, or it just gives us some flexibility. Because who knows what's gonna come through. It would be a shame to have a project that had some projects that were up to 120%, had that perpetual affordability. But didn't really meet the criteria otherwise.
So technically, anything with 10 units or more has to have a component of affordability at, in the LDRs, and that's now citywide, as you know.
Yeah.
So if you're, funding any amount of money towards any project that's more than 10 units, they already have to do something at 80%. So moving that,
So,
you have to do one unit at 80%, affordable to someone at 80%.
so that is I think about what's that building on Shelburne Road next to the Walgreens and Shaw's in front of the CHD buildings. They're putting in
Where the gas station was.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's where the Kegel Sitco was.
yeah. How many units are they adding?
9.
9. Why is that? It's under 10.
I'll tell you why.
That was
Yeah.
not, so that actually wasn't,
an Act 250.
that was Act 250.
Avoidance.
This was, that was
'Cause our number
permitted when ours was
12.
12. Our number was 12 when that was permitted. That was to avoid Act 250, but Act 250 is going through its own. I could have a whole meeting about what Act 250 is going through right now, but that's a different thing.
Okay.
The narrative is that there is avoidance of triggering that stuff because
Right, so there's these consequences,
Yes.
these unintended consequences. So I have the question of, do we want more flexibility to give to a broader scope of projects? And that's what you want us to kind of hold in our minds as we're reading this information.
or for now, maybe just keep it to 120% and we can kind of digest like expanding the scope, because I think that just takes more time.
I'm interested
Well,
in
right
the
now it's
selection scoring.
That's all in here,
So as you said, Burlington, Winooski, and Montpelier all do that. Sounds like
Yep.
it's.
So pay
I think
attention to
it's a good idea.
scoring. Yeah, do we think scoring is a good idea?
it seemed very comparative to our RFP process for the ARPA dollars. There was kind of a, if you meet these benchmarks, raises your score. So, hey, we got two similar projects. This one's doing all low income and this one's only doing this. Well, this one's gonna score better. So, yeah, you can still have that element in there.
Great.
Yeah, one thing, I talked briefly with Nora about, kind of with the ARPA funds that were dedicated to like the 16 shovel-ready units behind Dorset Commons. That I would expect that this committee would hear back at some point about weatherization. Because that came up, that the person who was speaking wanted to kind of earmark it for that, and that was not really allowed. So I don't know, I mean, those funds aren't earmarked for anything at this point. And the Housing Trust Fund is kind of right at that dollar amount that they were looking for, but they were gonna look for no new units, but it would be weatherization and then some infrastructure improvements. So my guess is that might come back. And to me, it would be nice to, I think those are all legitimate. And I think based on what you shared with us early on, Kelsey, those improvements would be under the mission of the Housing Trust.
I think they're allowable from the
Yeah.
last time I read it.
Yes,
It doesn't
I
have
think
to be
they're,
new housing.
I do think
but-
it's allowable. It would be nice, given the crunch, to see some new, actually incremental new housing too. And hopefully there'll be some opportunities for that.
Thank you. So just thinking about time, I want to make sure that we kind of get to everything on an agenda and the allowed space and time we've wanted. So we're ready to move on. Did you have anything? Okay. And we're gonna wait to see, we're gonna see an email. Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna give this to Tom, just so he has something.
So, and
Can I
then,
just summarize this first?
sure. And then just, oh, sorry, just before we do have Tom, who's gonna talk about at least 2 or 3 things, so I'm gonna try and, make sure that, yeah, I know, it's right there, I know, so we gotta, just trying to be a good timekeeper.
I did, it says on the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah. So we just wanna be we're gonna be mindful of the time because we wanna make sure we get to the economic. Okay, go ahead, Sandy,
Well,
sorry.
first, I just wanna say, and I haven't really confirmed this, but given the amount of things in these two bills that are, if not word for word the same, there's clearly cooperation and collaboration going on between the Senate and House committees. The other thing is, it's in the past, it's been the pattern that one body, i.e. the House or the Senate, starts a bill and then it goes to the next body. They're both working on big bills at the same time. And I just, they are taking housing seriously. The Vermont rental housing program is already now I'm going down with the House committee and go on. That is a pre-existing program, that may be administered by VHFA, but anyway, it's not a real big change there. Although there are significant changes to the criteria relating to the households that property owners rent to if they've gotten this money. But they've now made it up to, instead of being 70,000 for a certain group of people you help, it's now 50,000 with, under a certain criteria, you can add 20,000. Then they're creating manufactured homes are some of them are for home buyer or some of the most affordable there is, and so they're creating this same kind of thing, money to help the private sector either build or create or construct in manufactured or repair. The third one, this infrastructure sustainability fund, if I understand it correctly, this is the money that will pay for, help pay for the project-based TIF, which is in the Senate bill, but isn't, I'm sure there's a draft, but they haven't put it in the committee bill yet. They're still getting testimony on it. Now this, allowing tax credits for, this is actually tax credits from, there's tax credit money from the state.
Mhm.
And this is tax credit money that the builder, the developer can get to make available homes to first generation homeowners. And they're also making a distinction between a first generation home. There's the first time home buyer, which, you know, your parents could own a home. But they also have a separate now distinct distinction between that and a first generation. And they have all these things about, you know, your parents can't have owned a home, or if they got foreclosed or something, then if they're still not homeowners, you know, that kind of thing. The allowing municipalities to enact a 1% tax on short-term rentals. I'm sure that's not zillions of dollars, but if you've heard this from me before, it's like you gotta have a gigantic toolbox, and you gotta use every tool for every, you know, every source of resources you can get. I won't say much. I think it's great that they have a committee that's working on a universal design standards for all residential buildings across the state. So that's, and after I do the other, you probably haven't seen it, but I didn't have time this morning when I did this to do all the appropriations. Most of the appropriations are in the House bill, and I think that's pretty standard. The House is the money side, and the Senate isn't. So on the Senate, you've got the rental housing improvement program like the House, the manufactured home improvement program, the tax credits for the first generation home buyer. Now, this is, I won't get into because I don't totally understand it, but they're requiring the state, if it passes, treasurer to create and implement a positive rental payment pilot program for 2 years. And all this stuff about voluntary and, you know, all this stuff about documenting that and probably to make sure we don't have to do this. And anyway.
What is that?
It's, the purpose is to facilitate the reporting of participant tenant. Rental property owners have to submit information. They submit information to consumer reporting agencies, and apparently somebody has convinced them that they need to do this study, this pilot program. I don't
Isn't
know.
it because a lot of, because people with poor credit, the things that go into credit.
Yeah,
People have different feelings about how reflective it is, and
and
this is, yeah, this is an opportunity because rents and utility payments don't go into that. So if someone's a really good renter, but behind on their car payments, this allows
Gotcha.
them to have better.
Yeah.
good. I'm
Thanks.
glad- yeah.
Yeah.
Medical debt was being
Mhm,
evaluated.
mhm.
And, yeah, and then there's the, it's important that, citizenship and immigration status is now being added to the protections under access to housing and public accommodations. So that's, of course, if it gets, this gets, enacted, then I said the project-based tax increment financing, now the current one is based on a geographical area. This is primarily to allow municipalities to use, it's the same thing, they are able to use the increase in the appraised value or assessed value of land that they put water and sewer in, or they improve it and it gets developed into housing, it's more valuable. They can use some of that increased tax revenue to pay for this in instead of, adding it to the tax bill. It's like what we've done. It's how we got this. Then. Okay, of course, this is, they're trying to incentivize accessory dwelling units, or improvements to them. So they're providing a 3-year limited education property tax exemption. In other words, if this new accessory dwelling unit increases the value of your property, you don't have to pay education taxes for that, on that increase for 3 years.
It's pretty nice.
And
pretty
so, I mean, I'm
amazing.
just blown away by everything they're doing.
Can you repeat that? I don't like.
If you add an accessory dwelling unit to your home or it's not your garage or something, and that'll make
Or
your
a
home.
long unit, for
Yeah,
example.
exactly.
That
An
is.
extension, yeah, okay.
And that'll make your home more valuable.
Correct.
For 3 years, you won't get an increased tax bill, education tax bill. Because of that improvement. So, and they're recognizing, it's not cheap to, maybe.
No, it's not.
It's
So it's
not.
wicked expensive.
It is.
Yeah.
So then I just,
It costs you another $5.
yeah, that's really. Anyway, they, under the appropriations, I gave you numbers, but. The first number, 27 million, is to the Housing and Conservation Board for. 25,000 is to provide support and enhance capacity for the production and preservation of affordable. Rental income housing and homeownership units. Then there's 2 million to implement the resident services program, and don't ask me what, I sent this to you, but that's a program that was enacted and it gives you the a reference to when it was enacted. And with last year, I think it's part of the big bill from last year, 181. Then the 41,735,000 is to the Department of Housing and Community Development. 20 million is for the Vermont Housing Financing Agency to continue the implementation of the Middle Income Homeownership Development Program and Rental Housing Revolving Loan Fund. 15 million for the Vermont Bond Bank to implement the Vermont Infrastructure Sustainability Fund. 4 million for the rehabilitation of eligible rental houses, rental housing units under the Rental Housing Improvement Program. 2 million to improve mobile home park infrastructure. 500,000 to the 5 NeighborWorks of America. That's like CHT and Downstreet, and there are 5 of them that cover the state. That the affordable housing agencies that are not targeted to the elderly. For the purpose of providing homebuyer education, financial literacy, counseling, and foreclosure prevention programs. And these are really, it's hard to get money to fund this, but it's critical to make these programs work. 235,000 for home share. That's in particular for elderly or disabled people, and that's, I don't think it's statewide, it's here in Chittenden County. It's based in the building right next to Shaw's on Chilton Road.
I think it might be statewide. And when I was
Maybe
at-
they made
yeah.
it statewide. It's a fabulous program.
Yeah.
It's a way for affordable housing.
Mhm.
And then the last one, then there's the SASH program.
Which is huge.
That's a thing that was a pilot from the feds and got ended, I believe, and the state has chosen to continue it. And then the Senate got into funding how we get more people to be able to build these houses. So it's 373,000 to the Vermont State Colleges System for the purpose of supporting the creation of new apprenticeships, curriculum development, employer partnerships, and faculty training in the field of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Then the sum of $1,500 to the Department of Labor to provide a 3-year grant to the Associated General Contractors of Vermont for the purpose of promoting and expanding their training and certification programs specific to construction and building trades. Then I got, they're giving some money to the Department of Health. And I really don't know what recovery residences are, but it's $360,000 for recovery residences, and they're certified by the Vermont Alliance for Recovery Residences. I've never heard of the Vermont
Oh, I think
Alliance to
that's something
Recovery.
like Dismiss House, some of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then $1,825,000 for the opioid abate, from the opioid abatement, the Sackler Fund, abatement special fund, and this is for recovery residences also. It's, 1.5 million is for recovery residences, and 25,000 is to cover the first month fees for individuals entering a certified recovery residence in Vermont. So, I mean, as I said, they're not only have, I think, really creative ideas, I mean, new things to do, but they're putting a lot of money behind it.
This is not Fed money, right?
No,
No.
no,
Not a
this is
dime.
us.
Not
Yeah.
a dime.
This is our tax dollars at work.
Wow,
That's
that's amazing.
great. Yeah, no,
I
this is one, thank you for doing this.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
staying on top of it, yeah.
And Chris Donnelly, who does the lobbying for Champlain Housing Trust, and he was talking, he thinks we may not get all of it, but we're getting a lot. We should be able to come through with a lot of money for housing.
That's a lot of moolah.
That's a lot of moolah.
But we, but it's
Yeah,
all really
yeah.
good initiatives. It's hitting at every angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hitting at all angles, so it's really exciting.
I want to learn about, maybe you know about, but these recovery residences. I know what this house is. But
Yeah, I mean, they're a really big part of trying to get folks out of the correctional systems, because if you're on any certain types of supervision, you have to go to an approved setting, and if you don't have housing.
And I take it this 1.5 million is.
Recovery doesn't mean people with substance use disorder.
Yeah, no, that's what I was
Well,
thinking, that's what I was,
think this one.
that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
but what else are you
yeah.
recovering from?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you could be recovering from a lot of things, but that's what, capital R recovery to me always feels substance abuse. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking. That was more of those types of places that are sober and clean and
Well, I
clean
think-
living
Yeah.
spaces.
The opioid abatement special fund, the 1.8 million, that would have to be, I think, directed to people with
I would double.
substance.
Yeah, I would
misuse
think, and they would,
Issues.
yeah. In the other types of structure.
So just the funding, awesome, lots of money, big moolah, right? A lot of it's one-time funding, like we need, there's not a perpetual funding source for some of this stuff.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Circulate. Meaning from our taxes.
But what is their perpetual funding sources for in the state level besides,
Property transfer tax is the predominant one.
but that's the 27 million. And they're finally funding it at what's supposed to be.
Right, but like even that's not sufficient to fund these at these levels on a forever basis. Like this is. Money. Oh, yeah, it's like, we gotta do something, so.
We'll get started. Well, look at revolving, the revolving rental loan fund. And, those are only 2 years old. I mean, this is all new stuff that wasn't existing in terms of space,
Yeah.
stuff being done with housing. And now that's getting funded.
And it's been
Thanks to-
successful. I mean,
Oh,
when they show the success, it really supports additional funding, but I'm just, aside from the property transfer tax that's supposed to go, not into entitlement funding in the state. I don't know.
Yeah,
Speaking of
It
sources,
has to be reappropriated
yeah.
every year. I mean, like the money needed for Medicaid. It's gotta be, there's no automatic, like,
Or 2 year.
yeah.
So thank you so much
Oh,
for doing
you're
this,
welcome.
and we're gonna, and definitely it helps stay on top of everything.
I wanna make it quick.
Quick, yeah,
Speaking of new sources, when you mentioned taxes or up in Montreal, they have the welcome tax. Every time somebody buys a house or a unit or an apartment, they pay one-time welcome tax. And if you, let's say, down the road, 5 years down the road, you sell your house for a smaller or bigger or whatever, down the street, you're gonna pay new welcome tax because you bought a new asset. Even whether there's an investment or for your own sake. So they have this as an additional revenue source
mm.
for the city. Welcome
People are
tax.
creative, yeah, doesn't, how, that's kind of.
Well, and- Same as the-
No. No,
But
that's,
You're talking like a motor vehicle.
Every time a property changes hands.
Yeah.
You have to pay a tax.
Unless it's. There are exemptions at
Mhm.
PTT, but for the most
But
part,
not too many.
a lot of, some states have document recording fees, the fund as an alternative source on top of the PTT. So you need to go record a new lien in this property, $500 instead of $50 or whatever.
$15 a page.
Yeah,
Yeah, something like that, like, it's, like you said, you need a lot of sources to.
yeah, so we wanna have Tom come over and, Tom Bailey is from the, Economic Development Committee, and we've got a few topics for, 20 minutes, yeah, yeah.
This is interesting. I used to be in the affordable housing. She recruited me. And when I heard Kelsey reciting the requirements for the inclusionary zoning, they were all in the bill. She did this. Yes, you did.
Really? That's what.
You're the brains man.
You did it. And you kept at it and kept at it, and then it got done. You remember we were extending it to the whole city. So I'm Tom Bailey. I'm Chair of Economic Development Committee right now. I shouldn't say that. I've been doing it for almost 2 years. And I think I know all of you except you two. And you are
My name is Megan Tedder,
Megan what?
Tedder.
Okay,
My name is Tassos. I go by Anastasio's full name.
I like it.
Yep, Tassos is the short for that. And I work for Returns Credit Union,
Okay,
so.
I work for Evernorth and I work for CHT.
Okay.
And I live in affordable houses.
good.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do, what I was brought on to do is talk about the tech hub. But I should talk a little bit about the Affordable Housing Committee first. We have 8 on it.
Mean the development.
Economic Development Committee, not affordable housing. Thank you. Anyway, so when I got on, when I became chair, I started doing things a little differently. When I got on the committee, which is like 4 years ago, it was basically white men, most of whom were old. And the chair at that time, who should remain nameless, but did this thing where he sort of expected that the city would come to him and they would be able to opine about economic development issues. And then was surprised when that didn't happen. So as a result, not much got done. John Burton took over as chair after that. He was chair for a year. And John and I have worked on a lot of stuff together. He's currently in Aruba, but coming back soon. Anyway, and he's still on the committee. When I got on, I thought some of what we needed to do is network more broadly, as well as expose ourselves to what's going on out in the world. So we had a lot of guests, starting with Lisa Grunfeld from OnLogic. And they told us what the issues were for them about that they felt were constraining them that applied to South Burlington. The two biggies were housing and, this comes as no shock to anybody here, was housing and childcare. Because like it's been confirmed by almost every other employer. It's friend up at UVM Medical Center everywhere. Says they hire somebody and from out of state, they take the job, and then 2 weeks later, they call back and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Because I can't find a place to live. I've worked up a questionnaire that actually tries to go to HR for companies, do more with it, to say, what housing were you looking for? Because we've started talking about a range. Can be tech, highly trained tech person that looking for something more higher end, or is it a blue collar worker? I don't know the answer to that as well as we would like to. And we don't have the staff except Alana, who has done a lot of work for us, Alana Blanchard. Speaking of TIF, well, that's Alana's bailiwick. Anyway, so we've had a bunch of guests. We started out with Lisa. We've had Frank Coffey from GBIC. I'd heard about Kirk Dombrowski, who was the VP of Research at UVM. So I went and met with him. Well, got him to agree to come on and as a guest. And then between that time and when he came on, the Tech Hub was actually selected. It was one of 31 across the country. Something like 200 or more had applied, and so we were accepted. The Tech Hub, I'll say briefly, is an effort between UVM, the state of Vermont, UVM VP of Research, the state of Vermont, and Global Foundries to speed up, incentivize applications of gallium nitride chips that Global Foundries manufactures, and figure out ways for applications. Anyway, I'll get back to that. We've had Taylor Newton from Chittenden County Regional Planning. He pitched the West Vermont Sense. I don't know if you're familiar, ever heard of that before. It's a study that he basically quarterbacked that took Western Vermont and looked at the municipality. It was done in 2023, and it's done in connection with federal standards, and then and it talks about economic development there across the region. We've had Lucia Campriello. We had connected with Hula a bit. She is the CEO of Hula currently, replaced Rob Lair, who I was actually, because of my connections to economic development, was on a panel on more outreach up at UVM last year. And so we had her come because Hula's an incubator space. And then we also had Mike Bialma come, who is basically works for Rearch. He's the landlord of the tech park. And so the idea was, incubator to the next step. They didn't know each other before they got to the meeting, and Mike used to be on our committee until he moved to Shelburne. That was an interesting meeting. And now, it's a connection with Hula, which is one of that kind of resource. We've had, just recently, Doug Merrill from the Tech Hub. He is the quarterback up at UVM of basically the whole Tech Hub efforts. And Maureen Hebert, she is I can show you stuff she works on. She is with UVM and actually drafted the workforce part of the Tech Hub grant application that just got $23 million so that they could move up to the next step. Anyway, let's see.
the economic strategic plan?
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. We'll skip
Wait.
Tech Hub.
Well, both, I mean, but I just
Yeah.
wanna make sure, because we want people to come to that meeting on April 8th.
We do,
Yeah,
okay. So actually, this might be helpful, Kelsey. Is it possible for you to go to projects and the project site on the city website?
Mhm.
And then under that, you'll see
Mhm.
the
I was
strategic
promoting this,
economic development.
I was
plan.
promoting the civic soul activity, yeah.
That's where this is. So let me tell you what happened. That was another thing we did. That is, it was always on our kind of backup work to develop a strategic economic development plan, or at least do a way to get it going. And it had come up in our conversations a bit, but it never had really netted. So we decided we were gonna do this. And with some advice, we did a one pager. We did a one pager, there's the plan. Thing over there. We did a one pager and went to.
I don't know. It's on my computer, not up there.
Went to city council and said, we would like $100,000 of ARPA funding to do this plan. And much to my shock and amazement, they said yes. That was last spring. So it started this process. If you scroll down, you'll see. Okay, there is the strategic plan benchmark presentation. And why don't you hit that first? That's the benchmarking, sorry. I thought it was going to be something else. This is part of the plan, basically where our hired consultant is Civic Soul. See it down there in the corner. They're out of Austin, Texas. They're a national firm. And they're off and running to develop collect data, do tons of interviews. They're currently still doing them. That's where we are in the process. And then they will develop a plan. So part of the interview process is to do here, if you go back out and go back in, you'll see in the next item down. There we go, summary, February. Okay, this is what we discussed. We had a meeting last night of economic development. By the way, speaking of guests, Tom Chittenden was our guest last night. So a lot of what got talked about by Sandy. By the way, great summary, Sandy. But we went into some details last night about too. I was excited to hear it. Anyway, so this is sort of a here they are so far bunch of slides. And if you scroll down, here's table of contents, overview, insights.
This is the
These are
information.
people that they've reached out to everybody. This is sort of the 10 first insights. South Burlington's critical role, Vermont's economic landscape. South Burlington's economy is strong, but identity remains undefined. This has been a problem for South Burlington forever. Is it South Burlington, and what the hell really is it? It's certainly a collection of neighborhoods, but it's not something that anybody really thinks about as being a separate thing. And it's got some important stuff in it. A lot of people, businesses, the airport, huge. There's another guest that we had. We had Nick Longo come in and do a whole presentation for us. They're doing some amazing things out at the airport that are just in the pipeline, expanding it's expanding everything really. Retail and hospitalities sectors face challenges to growth, I suppose. Underutilized economic assets, they'll tell us about that, believe me. And then workforce, highly educated, but employers face talent challenges, which we just discussed. Housing, they can't recruit them. Transportation, that's a problem in the whole area, and it's certainly a problem in South Burlington. Growth presents opportunities for regulatory process. South Burlington has become a little notorious for how difficult it is to get anything. Sorry, Kelsey, how difficult it is to get to get permitting.
She's like, I didn't create
Not
it.
my job.
No, I mean, anybody that I talk to usually says, well, they were really nice, but, and then they tell a horror story about trying to get their permitting done. And then there's South Burlington plays a regional role, but coordination can be improved. One thing that's come out of the tech hub has been sort of the realization, because Kirk came to our meeting and he did the whole tech hub spiel with Trish Coates. Trish is the director of the Office of Engagement up at UVM. And because the tech hub is regional, suddenly they went, well, geez, you know, most of our issues are regional. Certainly the tech hub application is regional. And that is a problem for us because we're only one municipality and we tend to look at ourselves inside that silo when in fact the problems are all around us. One thing she started doing is a quarterly economic development confab, which is primarily city staff. The first one was all city, when I say city staff, the municipalities around.
Is it
staff.
county focused or more than
Oh, yeah.
Chittenden County or just
Oh, no,
Chittenden
it's
County?
county folk.
Just Chittenden County?
Yeah.
Okay.
Colchester, Essex Junction, Essex Town, Williston, us. Burlington hasn't been as active a participant. And turns out I and Elaine Haney from Essex Junction were the only two volunteer staff, volunteer people. Everybody else was city staff. So we've had two of those, and then they're gonna do them quarterly now. And it's just a way to check in and present the topic and see what can be done going forward.
And do you think there would be a housing, do people, our housing issue? I mean, how does that
We-
intersect with some of that discussion?
It hasn't there,
Okay,
really. I mean, everybody knows it's there.
it's there,
Everybody
yeah.
knows it's the problem. We all know it's the problem. Believe me, Civic Soul knows it's the problem. So that's another thing that's going forward. And
Well,
then,
that's why I like the statewide universal design standards committee.
I'm really curious. Tom didn't mention that last night at all.
Yeah, he didn't.
Well, it's to create it.
Yeah,
So,
I understand. Anyway, we brought Tom in because it was almost crossover to see what's going on. What's interesting to me that's different this year, that Sandy didn't mention is the bills are still committee bills. They're not on there hasn't been a bill yet, both for the House work that's being done and the Senate. I mean, they're obviously coordinating because you're seeing the same stuff pop up everywhere. When you start to read the bills, but it's still, and they're very detailed. I can only respect, I started to try to wade through it and was like,
I think their goal is to vote them out by the end of the week.
oh yeah, they have to cross over anyway.
Many bills are exempt from crossover,
Okay,
but they realize these are big bills, so they're.
no, I understand. They are gonna be big bills. Anyway, what I wanted to pitch before I get out of here is two things. One is that next month, you're all invited to our Economic Development Committee meeting, which is going to be run by Civic Soul. It's gonna be a mass event down in the auditorium. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions and comment. Civic Soul will be doing the presentation. And we'll be having microphones going out into the audience and everybody will get a chance to pitch in. Not just you, all of the committees, and all the public. If this is gonna work, it's gotta be, and when I say gonna work, I mean, if our economic development plan is gonna actually be something that the city can use and that can be the foundation for things going forward and can be the foundation and impetus for housing that we know we all desperately need, and can tie it in with regional action stuff, the Let's Grow Homes. Which leads me to another topic.
So let's, the
What?
date is April 8th.
Is April
Everybody
8th.
get out your
At what
calendars,
time?
5:30.
It'll be 5:30 to 7.
And it's just, is it just committees or is it actually public too?
Oh, it's everybody,
It is, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
but you're being specifically invited to come.
special,
So,
special guest.
let's see, and then,
That's
It's on Tuesday.
night.
It's the day before our meeting,
yeah.
yeah. I think, right?
I think that's right,
Yeah, yeah. I know
Um,
lots of dates because I have things on calendar, sorry.
Anyway. So that's the plan. Thing that's tentative, but I should at least let you know is perhaps for May, if we're not being supplanted by the needs of Civic Soul. When I say the needs, we were the one group that got the money. The interacting cell is staff here, and Alana's being the primary person that deals with them on a monthly basis. But the cell is Paul Connor, Jesse Baker, and our representative is Nicole LeBrecq. She is our committee member. She's a VP of research at I want to say Pizzigalli, PC Construction. And she's great. I mean, it's like she came on the committee and we needed her to do this. So, and she's really jumped into it. But I'm hoping in May, we already have Kevin Chu signed up. Kevin Chu is the executive director of Vermont Futures. They produce this, which you can get online, but I happen to have some paper copy. And for the people that don't have them, thank you. You have one, Elizabeth?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I already have.
Okay, and everybody else does. Okay. Yeah, wow.
Interesting information.
Yeah, lots of
You'll be
goodies.
amazed.
Graphics.
There's a lot in there.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Something being handed out right now.
Something is,
What?
The Vermont Economic Action Plan.
Thank you.
You can look it up on the Vermont Futures website, Ryan, and you should be able to open it up. I also think it's on the city. I'm not sure if it's on the city website at this point.
This is fascinating.
Anyway, I'm sure you can find it on Vermont Futures website though. So Kevin's already signed up. I'm hoping to get somebody from Let's Grow Homes. And then Evan Longfeld from O'Brien has agreed to, he hasn't agreed for May, but he's been wanting to come on. So then therefore we've got the economic plan, we've got the homes connection, and we've got a developer. That's my goal for
And-
May.
and that's your May meeting.
Yep.
Okay,
So, and you would be all invited to that as well, because it'll be about housing.
It will be interesting to hear the developer point of view.
Yes,
Very interesting.
well, Evan, Evan's been doing this for a long time, and he's been doing a lot in South Burlington.
I hate to say this, but have you considered June?
Who?
June. Because the legislature should be adjourned by then
Yeah.
and would know what all this stuff is.
The concern I have, it's all, Civic Soul is driving.
Mhm.
And Civic Soul is, when they produce the report, is gonna drive our agendas for the next year.
Yeah.
And I assume, because there's gonna be a lot in there, and it's gonna be connected with this, and incorporate stuff, and away we go. And there's a lot that the city can do that's in response. We'll see. I mean, it's always exciting when we started talking about this in the committee. It's like, we'd always jump to what we expected the recommendations were gonna be. And we're going, no, wait a minute. That's why we hire these people, so that they can come up with a recommendation. They can collect all the data, they can talk to the realm of people, and they've already done a fair amount, but they're still doing it. Kevin they mined him already. who lives in South Burlington, by the way. I tried to recruit him on our committee. Of course, that didn't work. No, he's way too busy. He's on the UVM Medical Center board as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
So,
We need him on there too.
but,
I didn't say that,
yeah.
but,
We didn't hear that.
I could
It's
show
fine.
you, Tech Hub slide and talk to you more about what the work that they do. Our guests were, on that meeting were, Doug, Merrill, who I've gotten to know following Tech Hub. When I heard about it, I went, well, first, we had Kirk, and then I went to the rollout, which was a year ago last November, and they didn't get their first round of funding, but then they did this last time. They're hoping to be confirmed this month, considering everything's a bit up in the air, federal-wise,
Yeah.
but they should be confirmed. And then Maureen, Hebert, who, she did a lot of the, she did the workforce part of the Tech Hub application. So she also came, and they both produced a pitch. Maureen does some really interesting things, has been for a while, but they'll be using the money to do a lot of what I would call niche workforce stuff. A lot of her focus is first starting with K through 12 and trying to educate more people, and then the college level as well, and a special school stuff that would support businesses so that we don't lose them.
Mm.
I have 3 children, and children. My youngest is 40, but 2 of them went out of state, got job experience, and now have moved back. That's the norm. As we know, 57% of college grads leave Vermont to go somewhere else. It's the
That's in
highest,
there, that's one of
it's
the,
the highest in the country. So.
They want to stay though.
They all
They
want to come
wanna
back,
stay.
but, you know.
No job opportunity this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, there isn't, in the old days, when I was little, or, you know, when companies were hiring, they'd hire from local, they'd know your family, and then you get started, and then you could be promoted up. Well, those days are long gone. Anyway,
Thank you so much. This is really great to kind of.
Well, it was-
I-
I actually would have had a lot more to say that would have been better organized,
But
except I just started jumping around all over the place.
no, well, I really appreciate you talk about the economic development plan because I really want us to get to that meeting. So thank you. Kind of switch gears on us.
And feel free to come to our meetings,
Yeah.
our regular monthly, meetings. We try to be productive. When we did our work plan, which was, I guess you were probably doing the same thing last fall, everybody was sort of delayed. We had a lot of new people, so I basically said, look, let's go around the room and what do you want to work on? And so that was kind of our work plan, and we haven't gotten a ton done. We don't have staff. Most everybody now has jobs. Instead of being all white men, we're half male, half female, and younger. So now John and I are the only two retired people left. He and I did a bunch of work on childcare. We did a bunch of research, and then Code 67 happened. So we decided that needed to play itself out, and it still kind of is before we actually could look at data again.
Thank
before
you.
you walk out, please tie your shoes.
Thanks.
Easier to flip on and on.
Thank you, Brian.
But that's
Thank you, Ryan.
there.
I'm gonna
Brian,
take the
have a good day.
elevator.
Thank you. Are you guys
And are there any